Sahana bhavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviram karavavahe, tejasvinavahitamastu, mahavidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Because this is a summary of the entire chapter 8, it will involve a number of Sanskrit words, and we will basically be putting everything we learned throughout the entire chapter in today's session. When we go through today, you will have a structure of chapter 8. It won't necessarily be about teaching because we've done that before, but structure is also important because it gives relevance to the teaching. Chapter 8 is in the middle section of the Gita. The middle section is between chapters 7 and 12. The first section is between chapter 1 and 6, and the third section is between 13 and 18. The main sadhana of the middle section is upasana. It is as important as sadhana of karma yoga in the first section, and as important as the sadhana in the third section between chapter 13 and 18, which is entirely jnana yoga. Upasana means mental activity, activity done by the mind, which means any activity like karma yoga or puja or kirtanam or prayers or chanting or japa does not fall under upasana, because all of these sadhanas are physically oriented in nature. Mental upasana means what? I'm using my mind to inquire. So we will ask the question, what kind of mental activity is upasana? Answer is meditation, contemplation, and inquiry into saguna isvara, which means God with attributes. So therefore, chapter 7 to 12, that is the middle section, the main focus is saguna isvara and not nirguna isvara. Because nirguna isvara, that is isvara without attributes, is in the third section between chapter 13 and 18. It doesn't mean that we won't attend to nirguna, it just means that the main focus is on saguna. So whenever I say upasana, what comes to your mind? Saguna isvara, which means meditating on God with features. This upasana has two types. The first type is called sakama upasana. And this means practicing meditation on saguna isvara for the purpose of material ends. That is, worldly desires, worldly benefits in both this world and other lokas, whether the person wants to go to heaven. It also includes meditating on devatas, that is, different deities which are supposed to give us certain benefits for the purpose of gaining miraculous powers. We have yogis who gain powers through development of certain sadhana, or healing ability, the ability to heal someone, clairvoyance, seeing into the future. We know these things happen. So this is all a result of sakama upasana. The second type is nishkama upasana. This involves practicing meditation on saguna isvara, meditating on God with features, without material desires. This means the exclusive focus for a nishkama upasaka is only desiring God itself. This means this is a much more mature upasaka. What's the difference between upasaka and upasana? Yeah, upasaka is the door of the upasana. Good. So this nishkama upasana is the main focus of chapter 7 and 12. Now this nishkama upasana is further divided into two types. Type 1 attains liberation while living on earth. We call this Jivan Muktaha. And the order how this upasaka goes about attaining moksha while living is: step 1, they start with saguna isvara upasana. Omniscient, omnipotent, benevolent, all-loving, all-compassionate, beautiful, full, complete, eternal. Then, through the length of time, the mind gets qualified or purified through a process called sadhana chatushtaya, fourfold practice, which I talked about in lesson 62, starting with viveka, discrimination, vairagyam, dispassion, sixfold virtues, and mumukshu. This means you have to be desirous of liberation. The world is attractive, we understand that. There's many wonderful options. Out of all of those options, the person is at such a place that they're simply uninterested, not because they are putting anything down, but because they're mature enough to understand it all comes and goes. Thus, I only desire what is permanent, that is moksha. After some time, that is when the mind is purified, this is step 3 now, the person stops performing saguna isvara upasana. Why do you think they stop?
Because they go for the infinite road of fulfillment.
Yeah. In other words, what Martin is saying is, there is no point having a pure mind and still meditating on God with features. Why? Because the mind is sophisticated enough to advance to the next stage of meditating on Ishvara, whose nature is nirgunam, formless. In other words, this person then switches to jnana yoga. This is when they're officially qualified for shravanam. Who teaches this is a competent acharya. It cannot be done alone because the one who's doing it alone is under the influence or is intoxicated by avidya. Therefore, they need help for someone to point out the blind spots. Just like as, in school or as a little child, we need someone to tell us, here's your blind spots. So we go, oh, thank you. In the same case, the teacher needs to do the same thing. So therefore, this dhyana yoga involves 3 stages. First stage, shravanam, listening to the teachings of Vedanta. Step 2, mananam. This is when the student personally takes the knowledge which has been acquired in shravanam and resolves their doubts. You know from your own experience, whenever we learn something new for the first time, we will naturally have doubts. Yeah, but what about? I don't understand. All of these questions will come up, and it is the upasaka's job to resolve it by themselves at their own time. And the third stage is nididhyasanam, dwelling upon nirguna ishvara, contemplating on the knowledge long enough until it is firm. This is called jnanam nishta, firm knowledge. What do I mean by this? Very simple. When you learn a new skill, great. Step 1 done, shravanam, you've learned it. The new skill, having it been learned, will provide some doubts. How do I do this? We will discover what we don't know, and then we will resolve it. Great, step 2 is done. In order to convert that into mastery, what do we have to do? Continue practicing what we already know. It's the same thing with anything. Mastery comes through persistence, through diligence, through time. Same thing in nididhyasanam stage. Jivan muktaha is the result, which means freedom from birth and death, freedom from concerns. It's no longer desiring for worldly experiences. And upon death, this jiva muktaha's BMI, body, mind, intellect, when the prarabdha karma expires, then what happens is the BMI dies and the jivan muktaha, nothing happens because they already solved the problem while living. So therefore you can't say now they're one with everything. They already solved that problem while living. Simply the body goes away. That's all that happens. So therefore there is no traveling for a jivan mukta. What's the difference between upasana and jnana yoga? Upasana focuses on saguna ishvara, Jnana Yoga focuses on nirguna jnanam, advaitam. Type 2. This nishkama upasaka attains liberation in Brahmaloka. Type 2 is only described in chapter 8. It's a peculiar chapter, sometimes for academic purposes, like what is this Brahmaloka and what is the purpose of Brahmaloka? Therefore, Krishna will also address these kinds of people. If one thing that we can learn from chapter 8 is the amount of devotion that a nishkama upasaka has to attain Ishvara. Because remember, they spend their entire lives devoting to Lord, because they want Lord so much. The order to attain Krama Mukti start with step 1, saguna Ishvara upasana, that means meditating on God with features until the last breath. Previous one, they stopped. This one until last breath. You're going to say why? The answer is because their mind was either not qualified sufficiently to move on to nirgunam, or they did not find an acharya to lead them to nirgunam or jnana yoga. Since they thought about God all their life, what happens is at the last breath, they're also thinking about what they were thinking about all their life, which is God. So therefore, we already discussed, whatever you think about most, and most of the time, when we are most vulnerable, that is the weakest, that includes the time of death, the first thing that comes to our minds is what we have thought about and what we valued most in our lives. You also know this from your own experience. When we're sick, then the first thing when we go inwards that comes to our minds, that just flourishes spontaneously, is those values which matter most to us. So therefore, Nishkama Upasaka has these values of Ishvara, saguna, coming through. Upon death, this person, type 2, travels through a path called Shukla Marga, or Shukla Gati, which means the bright path. Then they go to Brahmaloka. They get education by Brahmaji himself, teaching the exact same knowledge that we're learning here in Vedanta. And then, as a result, this Jivatma, that means the traveling agent who is now attending classes in Brahmaloka, gains effortlessly Krama Mukti, liberation, and therefore disassociates himself or herself from this BMI. Verse analysis of chapter 8. Verse 1 to 4. Krishna answered questions of what is adhi, atma, adhi bhutam, adhi daivam, adhi yajnam, Brahman, karma, and what is the significance of remembering God at the time of death. So now we answer, what is adhi atma? Adhi means corresponding to. So just take the word atman. So atman and Brahman are exactly the one same consciousness principle. So whenever you think of Atman, it means exactly the same as Brahman. One all-pervading consciousness principle. Next question you're going to ask is, then why do we have two different words for the one same consciousness? The answer is because it depends on the point of view.
The way of the ocean.
For example, one same person, from the aspect of that person interacting with his son, we give them a name called father. That same person, from the aspect or relationship to his boss, he is an accountant. So whether he's a father or an accountant, it is still the one same person. In the same way, the one same all-pervading consciousness, from the point of view of Vyashti, that is the microcosmic individual, we call that consciousness Atman. That one same consciousness from Samashti, that is the total point of view, we call that Brahman. Okay, so are we 100% clear now? I often hear people saying, let this goddess or God bless the Atman. This is incorrect thinking, because you cannot bless consciousness. Consciousness is. It's always free, always pure, always remains as it is. Atman has nothing to do with anything in this world. It just simply awares whatever is occurring at any one moment of time. Let's go to the temple and let my Atman be blessed. Because Atman and the word soul, usually these two words get mixed together, have nothing to do with each other. Soul means Jivatma. Jivatma means that one who is still carrying avidya. I still believe that I am the what? Body, mind, intellect. That is called the soul. Atman means consciousness, which is free of attributes. Therefore, you cannot bless that which is free of attributes. Okay, next one. Adhi bhutam. Total, perishable, material universe. Made up of 5 elements. So the samashti gross body, that is the total universal gross body, which includes all 14 lokas, we call that virat. Or, in the Bhagavad Gita language, adhi bhutam. So adhi bhutam equals virat equals samashti gross body, the total material universe. Next, adhi daivam. Just like an individual's mind regulates and governs the individual's body, in the same way, the total, that is samashti mind, regulates and governs the total samashti gross body, which we have established as adhi bhutam or virat. This is the samashti subtle body called hiranya equals adhi daivam. Next one, adhi yajna. This is describing omniscient Ishvara, the karma palam data, which means the giver of jivas punyam papam karma. The giver of a person's good deeds and sinful deeds, not good deeds, naughty deeds, and so on. Okay, so there is this principle which provides the result of our deeds, which is either punyam or either papam. Is referring to Ishvara, whose laws are seated in your body, who is recording every word, every thought, and every action. That's why we always say God is always watching, because God is always in this body. After recording, in fact it's always recording, but we'll just say after recording, all of our thoughts, words, and actions, what happens is Ishvara's law supplies corresponding effects which correlate with the jiva's thoughts, words, and deeds. If I speak kindly to you, that is indeed a word. And what will I get? What kind of feeling will I receive? A general good feeling. If I speak harshly to you, that is indeed a jiva's thought, word, and deed, which is following papam. What kind of reaction will I get in my body, whether I admit it or not? Something that doesn't feel good or doesn't feel natural. So in that sense, Ishvara is the karma paladata, the giver of every single of our actions, thoughts, and words, which we constantly, ongoingly receive in response to the jiva's causes. The jiva's causes means I am the cause of my life. And because I am the cause, as a body, mind, intellect, I receive exactly precise correlating effects depending on what I've put out into the field. So therefore, there is no life that is unfair. It is only fair at the level of what causes I'm putting out. Now, next topic. Karma is responsible for creation. What creation? The entire universe. The punya and the papam of the jiva is responsible for the manifestation of creation. So now you're going to say, why do we have creation? What's our answer? Because the jiva has punya and papam, which needs to be exhausted. Now, why do we have creation? Because to exhaust punya and papa, you need what? You need 2 principles. A body and a world which the body can interact with. In order for me to feel, what is punyam? What does punyam provide? Sukham, happiness. What does papam provide? Dukkham, suffering. In order for me to experience hurting you, I have to get back what? I have to have dukkham. To feel dukkham and to experience dukkham, I need a body which will suffer, and I need someone to punch me. I need some experience to give me, to return back this dukkham. In the same way, because of the jiva's punya and papam, which have to be exhausted and have to be experienced as what? Sukham and dukkham, I need to provide you with number one, a body which will interact, which will interface with the world, and I need to provide you the world itself. I need to connect you with two people in order for you to experience your joy or your suffering. Therefore, for that reason, we have this creation, which we call world, including all the 14 lokas. Since the punya and papa mixture are countless, what does that mean? In that same way, we have countless bodies. That's why we have so many different bodies, as many as we have fingerprints. Why? Because you have endless combinations of punyam and papam put together. Now you're going to ask, how is a body created? Based on what rule or criteria is your body created? The answer is based on the best exhaustion mechanism for the punyam and papam. For example, suppose a person is extremely lazy all their life and they die lazy. Now, do they need to get another human body to exhaust their laziness? Well, what's a better mechanism to exhaust their laziness? They can get, for example, a sloth body, because a sloth just does nothing all day. It's an animal. So what did I say about how a body is created? Depending on the best exhaustion mechanism for past punya and papam. So therefore, the body that we get is exactly aligned to best and most efficiently exhaust our punya and papa karma. This means after the person dies, they don't have to get a human body necessarily. They can be an animal, which will be more efficient for exhausting a certain quality, which has to play out. Another example is, so the mosquito jiva bites a human jiva. Now, what do we say about creation? Creation is created to help every single jiva exhaust their punyam and papam. So suppose a mosquito bites you right now. Is that happiness or is that suffering for the mosquito?
Happiness for the mosquito.
Yeah. So for the mosquito, it is exhausting their punya karma, because they're getting what? Sukham. It's actually a privilege to go to bite a human being, right? Otherwise, as a mosquito, I'll die as a jiva. So I'm very happy if I bite you, if I'm a mosquito. That's punyam for me, exhaustion. But for you, it is what? So it's for you. And why is it papam for you as a human being? Because you're suffering, right? Who go, oh, yeah, please bite me again, right? So in other words, we get to exhaust our papam by being bitten by a mosquito. So this is actually good now, if you start to look at it in this way. What I'm saying is this entire creation is a network, a beautiful, intelligent network of interconnected jivas, all interfacing with each other, returning each other a favor in order to help each other exhaust our punya, papa, karma. A doubt's going to come up. You're going to say, what about human beings? So you're saying that if someone else steals my wallet, that's exhausting papam for me, and that's actually exhausting punyam for them. Why is an animal born, or an insect? For one purpose only. To exhaust. For a human being, we have a choice. Therefore, the same analogy is not going to apply for a human being. For a human being, if I steal your wallet, I'm only acquiring papam. And the other person now also has a choice. If they start retaliating and cursing the thief and looking down upon them, then that becomes papam. But if they start to forgive, for them that becomes punyam. So that is the advantage and the privilege of being a human being. You can even gain punyam if someone hurts you by how you look at it. Next topic, verse 5 to 14. Krishna answers, what is the significance of remembering God at the time of death? Why should I remember God at the time of death? The answer is, so that I can increase my chances of being born in a more suitable place where it is more conducive for Shastra, for reading the scriptures, for contemplating on saguna isvara. or in chapter 8 case for going to Brahmaloka. Now, the observation that we made, how to actually remember God at the time of death. So habitual thinking modifies our lifestyle, and this lifestyle determines the kind of thoughts we have both during the day and even when we sleep, when we dream, but most importantly, at the time of death. So therefore, the thought at the time of death is a result of the lifestyle. Lifestyle is a result of habitual thinking. The question now comes then, how do we change this habitual thinking? Now, how do you now influence habitual thinking to influence your lifestyle, to influence your thoughts, in order to increase the chances of thinking about God at the time of death? Firstly, acknowledge that the older we get, the stronger our samskaras are, and the weaker our willpower is. You know this from your experience. The older we get, the more we repeat what we've done yesterday, and the less likely and the less inclined we are to change. Therefore, what does this mean? Start changing today and start accumulating this wisdom while you're young. There's no such thing as let's wait till we're going to go in retirement and then we're going to pursue this self-knowledge. It's most likely too late by then. First of all, expose yourself to a sattvic environment. What does sattvic environment mean? Give me some ideas.
Non-rajasic and non-tamasic.
Yeah.
Sattvic, elevated thought.
Elevating, yep. So something that is pure, something that doesn't allow us to be agitated over and over again. And the second way is have mindful speech. This is one of the easiest way, because speech directly reveals our samskaras. So therefore, if we can change our speech consciously, we are simultaneously changing our samskaras. The kind of words you use is crucial, because the words that we use every day is simply a representation of the words which we used yesterday. But yesterday we were not educated, therefore we're using the words of what? Ignorance. Therefore change your words in line with the scripture. Also, Narada Bhakti Sutras, Narada said, how do you deal with someone that is close to us, someone in the family, and there's some tension with them? Choose your company carefully. You need not hate. Only keep your distance like from a cobra. Thus, there is no need to hate them. Just keep your distance. Simple as that. Don't judge. We don't judge a cobra. We just say, yeah, cobra, you got your place. I respect you. But I'm not going to call you this or that. So in the same way, we just keep our distance. And lastly, this nishkama upasaka, to help them have thoughts in accordance with God at the time of death. What do they do throughout their life? They have what's called an alambanam, which means a concrete symbol of an Ishta Devata, which represents to them the absolute truth. If it's whatever Ishta Devata, personal God it is for you, that is what you use every day on your altar, in your bedroom, in the bathroom, wherever it is, on your phone wallpaper or something, to remind you of something that represents divinity, of the highest. And have that constantly reminding you, and also at the time of death. And as a result, this person would then have thoughts which are thinking about Ishvara at the time of death. Thus they attain Kramamukti. Verse 15 to 22. Two types of human goals were mentioned. First one is Bhagavan, and the second one is worldly goals. Can there be anything in between? If you think about it, it's either infinite or it's either finite. There is no such thing as 99.999% finite. The worldly goal represents nothing lasts. Also, there is joy and sorrow mixture. Wherever there is joy, there is sorrow, or there's a possibility of sorrow if something doesn't go right. There is joy at the time of togetherness, but there's also sorrow at the time of separation. Also, it means a life of limitation. Limitation simply means you can only enjoy so much. Our bodies can only be energetic so much. Look at a beautiful sunlight for so long. Everything is time-bound here on earth. And also it represents disease and death, rebirth. It also represents the path of preyaha. It means they want immediate gratification. I want something that is easy, doesn't require a lot of effort, and it appeases or it stimulates the five senses. The path of preyaha equals infinite, finite goals. Because there's always more to experience. There's always one more time. There's always a different flavor of joy to have. So therefore, it represents a never-ending chasing for a gain. Next one, path of Bhagavan. Bhagavan represents four important words. Number one, immortality, eternal peace, eternal joy, eternal security. Does someone not want these four? In other words, the whole world is doing nothing but looking for either to live forever, that is immortal. Nobody wants to go out of existence. We want security. Always more security can help, no problem. Please, more security. We can always have more joy, happiness, and we can always have more peace. The only problem is the world chases these four through either money or people or possessions or status. Is a person who follows the path of shreyaha, the path of the good, delayed gratification. So if something is worthwhile pursuing, you know that it doesn't provide immediate gratification. So therefore, there's a waiting period. You got to wait a long time to receive any substantial benefits. And it is very hard, this path. That means the path of the good is extremely hard. That's why not many people follow it, because I want instant gratification right now. Right? People are enjoying themselves. I can just simply join, no problem. So therefore, this path can be a little bit lonely sometimes because there's so few who are actually willing to postpone, and it requires also years of dedication and persistence. Not months or weeks, years. And it represents one infinite goal. Okay, verse 23 to 27. Two paths after death were mentioned. Path 1, Krishna Marga. This path leads to finite goals, which means 6 heavens between earth and Brahmaloka. The Jivatma also returns after enjoying him or herself, goes back to earth. So they have a really nice time, right? Oh, yes, that's fine. But as I said last week, if you're happy, the time goes so quick. So heaven is basically unrealistic if you're looking for something much bigger. And what kind of a person follows or gets Krishna Marga? Karmi. What does karmi mean? A doer, one who does ritual, one who does a lot of service for the world, who does good for the world, who provides social service, charity for the sake of gaining benefits that is pertaining to the world. In other words, a sakama upasaka is representation for Krishna Marga. Next one, Shukla Marga leads to the infinite goal, that means to Brahma Loka, where Jnanam is acquired, and that translates into Krama Mukti. Now, what kind of person, what type of person practices this? Nishkama Upasaka. And this person has never touched Jnana Yoga in their entire life. Why? Because they were unqualified. Therefore, they need to go into a different, much more sustainable, much more effective environment called the Brahmaloka to gain self-knowledge. And also because they didn't find an acharya. That's why they didn't touch Jnana Yoga. Final summary before going to chapter 9. Chapter 8 is only for 2 types of seekers, bhaktas. Number 1, sakama upasaka, one who is looking for worldly or heavenly pleasures. And number 2, nishkama upasaka. Which one, type 1 or type 2? It's going to be type 2 because type 2 is looking for nirguna isvara by thinking about God and then going to Brahmaloka. Krishna concludes chapter 8 by stating that saguna upasana, that means practicing meditation on God with features, is superior to karma. That means you can do all the duty, all the good in the world, it is still inferior to meditating on God with features. Chapter 9, intro. So in chapter 8, the person was asked to follow saguna ishvara upasana because they were unqualified and they didn't find a teacher. That's the situation in chapter 8. Now chapter 9 is going to be very clear, and it's going to say Krishna is not interested in krama mukti. Bhagavad Gita is not written for attaining liberation at another place, at some different time. It is only interested in gaining liberation while we're living amidst our families, amidst work, amidst normal people. Chapter 8 is considered for inferior seekers. Now, when I say the word inferior, I'm not putting down. Inferior just means one who is not at a stage to able to sustain or to inquire into the formless. Krishna sees Arjuna as highly competent and recommends him thus nirguna ishvara jnanam, because he sees Arjuna is qualified. He doesn't want liberation at a different place. He wants liberation, she wants liberation while living. And this moksha while living is only possible through jnana yoga, which involves shravanam, listening, and willing to invest time through mananam and nididhyasanam. So 3 steps there. I need to listen, and I need to remove doubts at my own time, that's mananam, and I need to then revel or abide in that knowledge for as long as possible, which is nididhyasanam. Jivatma, paramatma, aikyam jnanam. So what does this mean? That means knowledge, which is pertaining to aikyam, the sameness between the jivatma and paramatma. What is that one same essence which is of both the jivatma and paramatma? And chapter 9 starts by presenting saguna ishvara upasana, that means meditating on God with features, as a initial stepping stone to gaining nirguna ishvara jnanam. Remember, we can't skip, we have to take it step by step. So we're going to firstly receive a specific way to meditate on ishvara, and the purpose of that meditation is for qualifying the mind to then go into nirguna ishvara jnanam.
What would be the main difference between the chapter 4 jnana yoga and this?
It's the same thing. This is just extending more, a lot more detail. Yeah, there's only one jnana yoga. Jnana yoga just means advaitam, knowledge of the one, which is the essence of all. And thus each chapter, because Arjuna is a student, so you can't just put it all together at once, has to take it one chapter at a time. So we go back, we talk about, for example, chapter 8, and then we go back into the absolute knowledge of nirgunam. And then we take a break, and then we again go into nirgunam. Yeah, so that's how the Gita is structured. Any more questions before we go into verse 1? Yeah, this is, so chapter 7 and 12 is indeed bhakti. So everything we're talking about is really just how to devote to God with features. So when I say upasana, you're going to say... Yeah, exactly. Good. I was just going to say that. So upasana just means meditating, inquiring, contemplating upon, but that's exactly the nature of the bhakta. They're constantly inquiring, thinking of, adoring Ishvara.
Because you don't have bhakti with finite in mind, because you're going to devote to something.
You're going to devote to something, yeah. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Paravakshyam Yanasu Yave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajna Tva Mokshyase Shubhat. Chapter 9, subject matter, Ishvara Jnanam. So the question is, what does it mean to say God? Because we say this word in different religions, in different conversations. What does God actually mean? What is the nature of Ishvara? We talked about this in chapter 7 in comprehensive detail, and we say there are 2 natures of Ishvara. So nature 1 is the higher or the superior nature. Nature 2 is the lower or inferior nature. So far, when you think of God, what should come to your mind? 2 natures. Your question should be now what? What are these two natures specifically? So the inferior or the lower nature is in chapter 7 called apara-prakriti. This means Lord with attributes. Now you're going to say, what are the features of this Lord with attributes? First one is all names and forms. Whatever you can name, that belongs to lower. Whatever has a form, that belongs to lower. Whatever idea, no matter how subtle a feeling is, it is still a form. It is still nameable. I can name it. Therefore, it is lower nature. Next one, anything subject to time, which changes. Anything subject to change within time. So whatever you can observe in this world that changes, it's no longer in the same intensity and the same tempo or pitch as it was just a moment ago, that belongs to lower nature. Something obvious, like the weather. We all know the weather changes all the time. Lower nature. But how about our thoughts about who we are? Is that changing? No. One day I love myself, next day I don't love myself. Is that changing? Therefore, that belongs to the lower or the inferior nature called apara-prakriti. Next one, saguna isvara. That which is full of attributes, full of dimensions, aspects, points of views. Let me share you my point of view about a certain subject matter. What is that? Point of view. Therefore, lower aspect. Let me share you my aspect of how I see the world. What is that? Lower nature, apara-prakriti. Let me show you something that I've experienced. Not only is that going to have names and forms, because every character that comes out of our mouth is really just the alphabetical letter, but also letters itself, when you're describing it, changes, because A is different from B, B is different from C. And not only is the sentence going to start and is going to end, but also every word that comes out of my mouth is going to have a different attribute, a description of the experience, which itself was changing, because it's no longer here now. That's why I'm telling you about it. Next one, savikara. Innumerable in variations, combinations, possibilities. So the lower nature is that which is full of different possibilities. Look at the world around you. So many possibilities, so many ways that the bird can chirp in the morning, so many ways that a person can speak to another person, so many ways that you can smile at another person, so many ways that you can wake up, so many ways that we can eat, so many ways that we can experience our day, so many ways that we can create something new, whether it's a house, whether it's clean the garden or program something, so many possibilities, variations, expressions at performing a certain task or thinking about a certain object. That is what savikara is. Next one, savikalpa. Full of divisions. Next to it, full of partitions. Every word that you say, like hello, space, how, space, are, space, etc. So all of the words that we say are in themselves what? Full of, or are an expression of divisions or partitions. Anything that is beginning and has an end is in itself a division, in itself has a certain area which you can isolate it in. And next one, achetana tattvam. This means inert matter or not conscious. Now, your job at home is to look at these words and say, what is it about this world, in my experience, that I can observe that is innumerable, countless, always changing, is constantly dividing? That's called self-inquiry. Okay, now the higher nature, which we call, per chapter 7, para-prakriti. That which is beyond space and time. That means the absolute highest reality, awareness. Next word, nirguna isvara. Devoid of all qualities and properties. There's not a single quality or property you can attribute or describe it as. As soon as I describe it, it is already words, subject to divisions, subject to isolations, segments, it began and end. So therefore it doesn't apply to nirguna Ishvara. Therefore it is beyond conditions. This is still nirguna. And because it is beyond conditions, it is thus non-dependable. Because what does it mean to say something depends? It depends on what? Something else. But nirguna means what? Devoid of all qualities and attributes. Therefore, there is nothing for it to depend on. Thus, it's not depending for anything else. Next word, nirvikara. It remains unaltered, unchanged, uninfluenced, untransformed, unperturbed. Nothing can disturb it. Nothing can modify it. Nothing can make it different than what it was a second ago. Next word, nirvikalpa. Free of thought modifications. That means a thought cannot influence it, it cannot spoil it, it cannot contaminate it. For example, what's the difference between sunlight and moonlight? The moonlight is indeed the light of the sun, but it is still not original. It is a reflection of the original. And what is this? Free of reflections. Therefore, it's pointing to the absolute original. Because why? What does a reflection usually carry? Not only the original light, but also the surface which is exhibiting itself in the light of the sunlight. If the surface is rough, then you not only get the light, but you also get the roughness. So it is free of reflections. It is unwavering or steadfast. This means it's firm in itself. Nothing can move it, nothing can blow it, nothing can, take it out of itself. And it is not flickering. And last word, chetana tattvam, consciousness principle. Now, Krishna says, Arjuna, I will give you both the high knowledge, which is called advaitam, which is called vijnanam. These are two new words. Advaita means one without a second. Vijnana means direct knowledge. And I will also give you that lower, inferior, the knowledge of that inferior Ishvara, which is called dvaitam or jnanam. If you want imperfection in life and a lot of pain and general misery, no problem, you can also have that. Just focus on which one, the higher or the lower? The lower. Why? What is the lower? Dvaitam. What does dvaitam mean? This and that. There's always this to talk about and there's always that to compare to. So therefore, the whole life becomes about this, that, this, that. There is no break in the world of dvaitam. Also, dvaitam gives for opportunity for comparison. For example, God is pure, but me, I'm impure. God is full, but me, I'm partial. God is perfect, me, I'm imperfect. This, that. So how does one feel when they compare themselves to something so great? Small. So that's the world of dvaitam. And also I will give you the knowledge of advaitam, which means that if you want to be free of both perfection and imperfection, what does say both perfection and imperfection?
It's opposite sides of the same thing.
Yeah, okay, from the world of mithya, from the world of duality, perfection is always relative to imperfection. So we have to correct that. If you want perfection, which implies absolute reality, in that case focus on the knowledge of advaitam or vijnanam. Why is there no misery if one focuses on advaitam? What does nirguna mean? Devoid of features, of attributes. Therefore, can I compare myself to God if both are nirgunam? So there is no chance for comparison. Therefore, there is no chance to say, he is perfect and I am not. Because both are devoid of attributes, thus they are essentially one. Now, Krishna is going to start advertising self-knowledge because sometimes we need some motivation. Why should we learn this? And how is this going to help us in our life? So he says, what type of knowledge will be shared? And he says, guhyatamam. That means the rarest knowledge which cannot be gained anywhere else because few know about it. Therefore, it's not easy to get. If you go to a wedding or a social gathering or an event, you're not going to hear people around the desk talking about nirguna isvara jnanam. And even if they do, they're going to speak about what? Saguna isvara. So all of these features get spoken about, but you will almost never hear anyone speaking about that which has no features. Thus, it remains the greatest open secret. It's right there, it's available to us. But because few understand it, it remains the greatest open secret. It is a secret, but it's not a secret because it's open. But it is a secret because very few understand it. How will this knowledge transform our lives positively? And then Krishna says, Yat jnatva mokshyase ashubhat. Gaining this knowledge and assimilating it through practice, the bhakta is released from beginningless rebirth. But what about while living? The answer is one will be freed from different psychological upsets like slavery to raga dvesha, likes and dislikes. Constantly being pulled towards the world because I like something and avoiding because I don't like something. A whole life spent just pursuing what I like and don't like is painful. For example, I like eating. So the person's trying to study, but because their like for eating is so strong, it actually causes them to go, sorry, I can't study anymore. I need to go out and eat. So in other words, they're a slave to their own raga dvesha. Or suppose there's a certain type of person that they don't get along with. And as the moment they see someone that closely resembles that face or that personality, instantly their entire character, their entire predisposition starts to go small, cold. In other words, the person is innocent, but because I have a certain dislike towards them, it affected my own mood. So that's what we call constant slavery to likes and dislikes. Next one, freedom from kama, desire. Desire just means I have to. If I don't, then I'm not going to survive. I'm going to stop existing. So therefore, I have to in order to be happy. Next one is krodha. Anger comes in different forms, like frustration or agitation. Next one is lobha, greed. That means wanting more. Moha. So moha is attachment or delusion. Whenever we're attached to something, then we start to attribute more value that it doesn't deserve. Therefore, we start to ignore the rest and only attribute that which we're attached to. You know, today, like iPhone example, iPhone attachment. Some people even have an accident. They're walking on the street, right? And they're looking in their phones, and then the car can hit them because they're so attached. So it's not just a matter of saying attachment. It actually can be life-threatening. Mada is pride, the sense of superiority. Or can also go into the inferiority mode, that is inferiority complex. It just makes it closes down a relationship, any kind of pride. It makes the person generally unappealing and they can't get along with others. And also matsarya, jealousy. That means someone else has something better than I have. They're smarter, they're more beautiful, they are richer, they have more luck in life. All of this can come in very subtle ways and it can be extremely disempowering for the individual. So therefore we get freedom from all of this. And finally, the highest goal, which all the saints have been speaking about since time immemorial, which is moksha, is, quote, attained. Ignorance is removed. Krishna says, and why have I chosen you, Arjuna? Why have I chosen to teach you? Pravakshyam yanusuyave. Because you have the rarest quality required in the student. Non-critical mind. To listen in a critical attitude or a mind means I find fault with either the presented, that means the presented knowledge, or the presentor, the one who is presenting the knowledge. So in other words, all of the fault and the focus is on that one who is presenting, or where is the fault in one of these teachings. And this actually leads to intellectual arrogance, which is a result of knowledge at the absence of dharma, equals intellectual arrogance. That means there is knowledge there, but there is no dharma. There is no humility. Arjuna is not this kind of category. Arjuna is extremely intellectually humble. Intellectually humble just means, I don't know. Help me. I need help. I can't do this by myself. I'm not as strong as I thought I was, so I need guidance. This means that one is willing to give the Shastra a benefit of the doubt. I may not have understood what I understand properly, so let me match my understanding with what the Shastra is saying. Versus, there is a fault in the Shastra. So one is non-critical and one is critical. You know, we have people finding faults in the Shastra. It's like old. It doesn't apply in today's world anymore. That's finding fault. This quality of non-critical mind simply means I try to match my understanding in light with what the Shastra is saying instead of trying to judge the teaching itself. And that is called Shraddha, open-mindedness or faith. Therefore, Arjuna, I will teach you because you are open to listening. The Lord said, however, to you who are non-critical, I shall impart this jnana along with vijnana, which is the greatest secret, and gaining which jnana you will be freed from samsara. Raja vidya raja guhyam pavitram idam uttamam pratyaksha vagamam dharmyam susukham kartum avyayam. So Raja Vidya, the first word, it means Ishvara Jnanam, which Mundaka Upanishad also calls para-vidya, is the royal knowledge which is the greatest of all branches. That means think about any kind of branch of knowledge in the world, about anything whatsoever. This royal knowledge is the greatest. That means nothing goes above this knowledge. It's the highest knowledge, or the highest knowledge that a human being can possibly be privileged to in all lifetimes, no matter how many lifetimes they've lived. And it is the highest. Why? Because it deals with the non-negatable reality called satyam, which means knowledge, knowing which at once everything else becomes known. In other words, knowledge, once I know this knowledge, immediately everything else becomes known. What do we mean by this? I can either spend my whole life knowing about different features of different bangles, different earrings, different necklaces, different rings, or I only have to know the one single gold, which is the essence of every single ornament. Thus, knowledge, knowing which at once everything else becomes known. It liberates the person from pain of having to know about individual objects, which constantly produce the feeling of self-ignorance, thus inadequacy. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So the whole life spent like this is not fun, because it's constantly reminding us of our smallness. And also this knowledge, which we will learn in chapter 9, does not need to be maintained as we get older. This means you can get a brain disease or a brain tumor. Even then, it doesn't have to be maintained. It only has to be owned. That means owned up to. That means you have to just be it. We remove the word you, just be. Remove the word just, be. Whereas the innumerable branches of knowledge which we have spoken to, that means any kind of knowledge you can think about, any area of life, produce suffering in time. What do you think?
Because they're time-bound. They perish.
Yeah, time-bound. And what's the reality of remembering something that you love?
It's going to go away.
And we forget. It's trying to maintain, revise, re-summarize what we have learned. And when we go, oh, I'm so proud what I know, you know what happens? 3 months later, after a holiday, you come back, you almost forgot 25%. So the whole life becomes about revision, and that in itself becomes extremely limiting and discouraging. Why else? Because it is mithya. It can be falsified through a different point of view. The moment someone else from a different school comes, they can actually say something that sounds extremely reasonable, and suddenly that knowledge which I was holding onto becomes invalidated. And that becomes extremely hurtful. Suppose you know a certain programming language and a new programming language comes to the market, which is a lot more efficient, and suddenly you discover, my programming language is not as good as this one, so I spent 5 years basically for nothing. So now I want to learn a new programming language. So this happens all the time with these branches of knowledge. We have to update, we have to sort of research, is what I know the best? And of course, the people are always innovating, so it's not going to remain the best. And also because innumerable branches of knowledge never touch the knower of the knowledge. That means I can know about how to be a doctor and be a really good heart surgeon, but I do not know about that one in whose presence the knowledge of heart surgery is. I do not know the subject. I only know about the various knowledge that the subject knows, but the subject doesn't know itself. It cannot remove lifetimes of psychological complaints. Why? Because every life we get a dose of sanchita karma dumped into our minds, and then we have to play out that sanchita karma. So this is why every new life a person has to exhaust a certain theme about their life. They have to exhaust a certain desire. So what is this desire? Sanchita karma has been converted into prarabdha karma, and thus I have to play out punya and papam to exhaust that. But what happens when the person dies? A new dose of sanchita can get converted into new prarabdha, and then I also have to then go through psychological problems. In pure English, I'm not loved. Nobody loves me. I'm lonely. I'm ignored. I feel ignored. I feel disrespected. Colleagues don't respect me at work. I'm not good as that person over there. I could never be smart like them. Those kinds of psychological problems, upsets, discouraging thoughts, one is freed from. Why? Because they all belong to what? Body, mind, intellect. But what is the jnani done? Disassociated from that which carries these psychological problems, thus they are understood as anatma, not I. Therefore, Vedanta, by its assimilation through mananam and nididhyasanam, removes instantaneously these psychological upsets. Thus we save ourselves a lot of money from different kinds of therapies and different kinds of ways of addressing belief systems and clearing out hypnotherapy. There's so many systems that exist that are called modalities that are meant to treat different conditions. So one's instantaneously freed from those conditions by disassociating from the container which carries those conditions. It's like a tree. Imagine a tree, and what we're doing usually is we try to address every single leaf on the tree. But we don't realize, even if we cut the whole branch through one kind of modality, then what's going to happen? The branch is going to regrow, but also we haven't addressed how many other branches. So in other words, sanchita is that which gives birth to so many different branches. That's what do we do? Vedanta style, cut the tree. Akaraja guhyam. It is the greatest open secret because the self cannot be known through two means of knowledge, which is the only means of knowledge we actually have. Pratyaksha pramana, which means of knowledge through the five senses. And anumana pramana, which means, before I explain, can I see gravity through my senses? But can I infer gravity by the observation of an object falling from its static state to the state of the soil? I can infer, even though I don't see anything pulling down, there's no hand coming and pulling the apple down, but there is certainly an invisible force that is pulling it down. Thus, through pratyaksha pramana, through my eyes, I can infer on the basis of this object interacting with another object in a certain way. I can then use anumana pramana called inferential logic, inferential knowledge. Now, inferential knowledge and pratyaksha pramana both happen where? In the mind. However, self-knowledge is beyond the mind. It is both beyond and through the mind. Thus the mind and the senses cannot discern that which is without features, nirgunam. Therefore, it remains the greatest open secret because it is beyond the only two means of knowledge that a scientist has, which is through senses and inference. Uttamam pavitram. It is the greatest purifier in creation. That means there is no greater psychology or modality or technique that you can find in this entire existence than the benefit which self-knowledge provides. In other words, it destroys all sanchita karma and destroys all agami karma. And it destroys avidya, ignorance. If you think about it, no matter what spiritual retreat you went to, no matter what self-help book we read, or what program to improve ourselves we went to, has that worked? The answer is yes. But how long? Short time. So in other words, any kind of purification method purifies for a while. But because the mind goes back to the world, what happens? It picks up impurities again. Whereas this kind of knowledge, once it purifies, there can be no future imperfections or contaminations or spoiling the purity. Okay, next one, pratyaksha vagamam. It is available here and now. So all of the benefits that we're talking about is possible while living. This is good news because we don't have to depend at some heaven which we actually don't know proof of. We can attain the highest knowledge, that is moksha, right here while living. That means it's not a promise after death. So it's a very reassuring statement. Next one, dharmyam. It keeps with the Vedic teaching. This is important because the Vedas in our tradition is considered the source of knowledge. And anything that does not adhere to the Vedas it doesn't flourish generally in India. For example, Buddhism, even though Buddha was extremely great and he still is a great person, he made one single mistake, and for that reason Buddhism simply doesn't flourish in India as other schools do, which is what? Nastika darshanam, which means non-believer in Ishvara. So for that reason, that one little mistake, the Buddha took out the Vedas, non-believer, thus it doesn't flourish in this tradition. That's why even Krishna Avatara promises and says to Arjuna, this follows the Vedic tradition. If it doesn't, then even Arjuna is not going to listen to Krishna. Susukham kartum, gaining this knowledge is much easier than chapter 8, which is Krama Mukti. Because in chapter 8, Krama Mukti, you have several steps. You gotta, number one, perform upasana your whole life. There's gotta be a certain dedicated moment. Also, at the time of death, you continue that upasana, sit in a certain asana, and then at the time of death, think about God, withdraw the prana to the heart, force it to the Shushumna Nadi, gently release it to the Brahmarantra, and then hope that you get to Brahmaloka, gain the knowledge there, and then attain Krama Mukti. So in other words, this knowledge is much easier than that whole process, and for that reason, it is worth pursuing. And lastly, avyayam. The result of this knowledge is permanent freedom, moksha. Whereas all other knowledge will become irrelevant through time. And also our interests change. So if you like a particular area of interest, like a certain book or a certain area of philosophy, then owing to the circumstances that are in our life, only because of them, they retain our interest. The moment someone in our family dies, like our spouse, like our brother or sister, you know what happens? Our whole outlook of life changes. Thus, it negates all of these other branches of knowledge, but this knowledge, avyayam, cannot be negatable because it is the essence of all knowledge. I'm sure that some of us have practiced some great arts in our life at some point. Maybe you were a great martial artist, maybe you were a musician, maybe you were doing some kind of craft, or doing some painting or programming a certain language, or doing something that you were good at that moment. But then why do we, if we're exposed to that again, are unable to get back into that state, into that sort of creativity? Because the mind has changed. We have moved on, our preferences have moved on, our tastes have moved on. Thus, this knowledge is free of those kinds of problems, those kinds of constant forgetting and constant losing the skills. So this concludes the salesman mode, and next week we will go into the official teaching of chapter 9 and actually get into all of the knowledge that we've been speaking about. This is the greatest knowledge, the greatest secret, the most sacred, directly attainable, unopposed to dharma, very easy to pursue, and it is imperishable. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.